Greetings again. I'm Alessandro Soriani from University of Bologna and welcome back to the videos of the training modules about inclusive education of the Including Jerusalem project. This module will be focusing on cooperative learning and particularly we will focus on the following objective: knowing the principle and the possible applications of the cooperative learning strategy. Before diving into the details of cooperative learning, let me take a step back and reframe the strategy, the cooperative learning strategy, into the framework that we presented a few videos ago. So, do you remember the architectures that we discussed in module number 2? Exactly. This is the same picture, and we highlighted the collaborative architecture because the cooperative learning strategy fits into the collaborative architecture. More in detail, cooperative learning is a specific teaching methodology through which students learn in small groups, helping each other and feeling co-responsible for each other's journey. The teacher takes on the role of facilitator and organizer of the activities, structuring learning environments in which the students, favored by a positive relational climate, transform each learning activity into a process of group problem solving, achieving objectives whose realization require the personal contribution of everyone. These objectives can be achieved if, within small learning groups, students develop certain social skills and competencies, understand as a set of interpersonal and small group skills essential for developing and maintaining a qualitative high level of cooperation. So, cooperative learning is something more than just working in small groups. Remember that for the next things and reflection of this video. In this table, you can see a comparison between cooperative learning and traditional teaching approaches. As you can see, in the role of teachers in cooperative learning is the one of facilitator, observer, um, supervisor, advisor, supporter, rather than in traditional approaches, the teacher is someone who controls, who someone exercises authority, and he is someone uh, who who is at the center at the learning process. Concerning the teaching activities, cooperative learning holds keywords such as group discussion, work together effectively, and teamwork skills, as if traditional approaches focus on drills and practices as a memory and review of knowledge. Interaction model in cooperative learning follow the concept of positive interdependence, which we will explain better in the next pages, and two-way communication. So communication is never one way from the teacher to someone, but it's always a network of communication. Interaction in traditional approach follow a more negative interdependence. There's a sort of competition, and there's one way from the teacher to the audience. Evaluation in cooperative learning has an emphasis on both the learning process and the outcomes. And in traditional approaches, the emphasis is mostly on the learning outcomes. As you can see, The cooperative learning strategy is something that valorizes more democratic approach, a more student-centered approach. So it is a practice that could really transform in a more inclusive way the context of the classroom. Goal is to migrate from an idea of that a good class is a quiet class to some other perception of the classroom as something that learning involves some healthy noise. Another transition that focus on is to keep your eyes on your paper to help your partner solve the task. So this is a very different approach. Another from to is from please sit quietly to get up and look what other did. So this is very important. In a cooperative learning environment, the students are encouraged to talk to each other, to move around the classroom, to also help each other and seek for help also. And the last one is switching from talking is cheating to please verbalize your because sharing is part of the learning experience in the cooperative learning environment. Now, this is my favorite part of the cooperative learning structure and the strategy. The four cooperative learning principle, the so-called PIES. So cooperative learning strategy sits on four pillars, which are four concepts that when they're present in an activity, you know that that activity is a cooperative learning activity. So the first letter, the P, stands for positive interdependence. Positive interdependence creates mutual support among students, creates peer norms favoring achievement, and increases the frequency and the quality of peer tutoring. When there is a positive interdependence, we know as teacher then that the students in the group are cooperating with each other, are helping each other, are supporting each other. This is very, very important. The another concept, another letter of the pillars is the I, and which stands for individual accountability. Individual accountability highlights the importance of personal responsibility and dramatically increases students' participation and motivation to achieve goal. Without the engagement of each person of the group, you can't have uh, the work done. You can't have a group working together. So this is very, very important. Another aspect is the sorry, which stands for equal participation. And of course, this is a concept that is strongly related to the concept of inclusion. Equal participation means that students who otherwise would not participate or would participate very little become engaged and have the possibility to participate as much as the other. So this is very important, and it is why it is important to monitor the work of the group and the relationship between the group members. Finally, the S stands for simultaneous interaction. When you have simultaneous interactions, you know that the groups are working parallelly and everyone is doing something at the same time. The amount of participation per students and our efficiency in teaching and managing the classroom is increased enormously when we use simultaneous interaction rather than sequential structures. Because sequential structures is based on the fact that to focus on a task, you need to do a task before. When you have simultaneous interaction, you can have different people working on different things simultaneously, and this is very engaging for students. So to wrap up, four letter PIES, these are the four cooperative learning principles, according to Kagan, Spencer and Kagan. Let's talk about classroom settings because it's very important to focus on the environment if you want to have and facilitate cooperative learning. The pictures in this page are presenting a different ways of organizing the space inside the classroom. So, for instance, we have a standard classroom where you can find the desk, all the desks where the students are sit, and the teacher position here. And as you can see, this setting is rather hierarchical. So it gives back the idea that the teacher is someone more important than the students. Then there's also differences between students and students because there are the students who are sit in the first row and the students who are sit in the back row. Whether the other structures are very interesting because they sort of dismantle this concept of hierarchy in the class. And so you can have different way of organizing the desks and organizing also the way the students are sit and located in the classroom. What I find interesting is that especially these two down here maintain also a big empty area in the center of a class where that can be used also for any kind of activities. So, for instance, presentations, small games, small activities, short activities, and also movement to allow students to move and interact. So very interesting and very important. Now, I just want to make you reflect. Would it be possible for you to imagine another way of organizing the class uh, that you are working with? This is a very interesting question. Now, let's switch to another concept, another very interesting concept, which is students' role, the students' roles. Now, cooperative learning is not just divide the classroom into groups and let them work on a task, but it is structuring that work. And we can structure that work by uh, thinking carefully about the task and also think carefully about the role that each member of the group is covering. For instance, you can have a task manager, someone who is in charge to focus on the accomplishment of the task. The time manager, someone who is in charge to monitor the time and make sure that the task is done in that amount of time. The material manager, of course, cooperative learning means working with different kind of materials. You name it. It can be markers, pencils, scissors, or even technology, tablets, um, cameras, I don't know, any kind of thing. And so the material manager is the one who is in charge to make sure that his or her group own each material needed. And then we can have other roles, very important, like the interaction manager, facilitator of relationships, the reporter or the presenter, the recorder, someone who is in charge of taking pictures and document the activity, or even the quality checker, for instance, to make sure that all the outputs are to a given quality. To work with the roles, it's not easy. Um, People need to be educated. Students need to create a culture of working together and a culture of working with different roles. This is why at the beginning, when students are not used to work together or work uh, in uh, in cooperative learning environments and cooperative learning structures, it is very important to assign roles and explain carefully um, every role. So then, once you have created a culture of cooperative learning, you can start asking them to give them more autonomy. For instance, say, okay, now that you know how things work, remember that in each group you need to um, identify a task manager, a time manager, material manager, and a reporter, let's say. So again, it's a process. It's sometime is a long process, but you need to start with small steps. Let's dive into the different cooperative learning structures and techniques. One of the most famous technique is the jigsaw. Um, the jigsaw, it was early introduced by Elliot Aronson um, in the 70s. And it is a very interesting way of working and structuring the activity in groups because it stands on two different phases. The first phase, as you can see here on top, is identify a given topic and divide this topic into, let's say, five areas, five subjects. Now you need to create groups and assign to each group a subject. In this first phase, the thematic groups have the task to become experts in each member need to become expert in that given topic. After a first phase, which can last from 15 minutes to even an hour, it depends on the complexity of the of the uh, of the topic. In the second phase, each group, each member need to group again, but this time with people from different group. And so you can see here are all dressed in red, and in the second here all in orange, all in green, all in blue, all in purple. And in the second phase, in each group sits a person with a different color. It means that in the second phase, in each table, you can find people, experts in different fields. The goal of this second phase is to put together the pieces of the jigsaw. And this is why the name of the technique. And um, variegated groups where each expert from the thematic groups will share knowledge with the rest of the participants. So in the first part, you learn about a topic. In the second part, you share your knowledge and you listen from other people sharing their knowledge. So this is a very efficient technique, the jigsaw. Why is useful? So the jigsaw is useful because um, it's very efficient in the organization of the materials. It encourages listening, engagement, empathy by giving everyone an essential part to play in the learning activity. And this is what we mean by um, individual accountability. So that everyone is responsible for others' learning. Group members mark work together to achieve a common goal, and this is deal with the positive interdependence. Each person depends to the others. No students can fully understand the thing unless he works with the others. And of course, it's useful because um, you can implement a sort of evaluation of other work. So if you learn and if you understand properly what the other people said, means that that person know very well the subject. Um, the jigsaw is a very, very useful way and very rather easy way of structure the work. So I really recommend you to try. Another way and another technique is the placemat. Now, the placemat is a technique that allows small groups to take collective notes or to brainstorm together about a task. And there are two ways of using it. The first part, like this one, without numbers and a common area in the middle, um, it can be used by in this way. So each member work on his part of the box. I can sit on this side, I brainstorm in this part, someone else is sit here and he brainstorm in this side, someone else is she brainstorm in this side, and etc. And then after this personal phase, we are going to write what is common in our reflection in the center of the box. This way, we can highlight immediately the common elements. Very, very interesting. Another way of using the placemat is the numbered technique. So each box, as you can see, is marked by a number. And the member of the group will write in the, let's say, field number one, the elements of a personal brainstorm that have been mentioned only to one member. And then here, the elements of the brainstorm or the elements of the discussion that are shared by two people of the group. Here, the elements that are shared by three people of the group. And here, the elements that are shared by everyone in the group. This technique is particularly useful because you can immediately see the elements that are shared by everyone and those elements that are only highlighted by one person, a single person. This way, you will not lose a potential interesting element because it's not shared by everyone. So, as you can see, it's a very powerful technique. A few slides ago, I mentioned the importance of monitoring the work of the group, the different groups. Monitoring objectives include tracking individual performance and growth in disciplinary areas, group skills, and individual behaviors. Monitoring is an ongoing process that formatively evaluates the work done so far. It is important to establish checkpoints, reminders, and time limits by setting intermediate deadlines. Otherwise, you will lose control of the situation. Asking a group to report to you on their progress, plans, or difficulties will also provide with information on understanding that you might not get from the mere observation. So it is important to engage the students to tackle with to engage a conversation with them. It's also important to monitor behavior and to observe what the students are doing. If they're participating, if they are having a conflict, if their interaction is superficial. So you need really to observe and intervene. An effective monitoring technique consists of using a clipboard with the names of all the students and enough space to mark grades and notes on performance and behavior during the activities. This technique encouraged teachers to record the information from all the pupils, not just to the most visibly active ones and not just to the most difficult ones to engage with. This information can then be used later to give feedbacks to the groups or feedbacks to individuals and to enrich their own self-assessment and their own awareness about their participation, about the learning processes. The more transparent you are, the more the pupils will understand the situation and they will be aware of their learning and their interactions. Now, let me share an advice about how to intervene within the group dynamics. Intervening on a group or individual who does not behave according to the roles or the rules of the task, it's not an easy task. It's not an easy. Uh, it's not easy um, because it's not a matter of punishing or um, exercising an authority on the students, but it's the matter of proposing an alternative behavior. One can intervene publicly or by taking problematic subjects aside and engage him or her in a conversation. In many cases, even better, the teacher facilitates the resolution of a conflict or a problem within the group because it's where it is born. Strategies employed by teachers often include asking pupils to identify the problem or to propose alternatives, asking for reactions and comments, and encouraging the group to choose and try different routes, different approach to the problematic. Of course, working together, working with groups, um, working within times is a source of potential conflict, but we are there as teachers, as professionals in the field of education to transform the conflict into something useful for the educational activity. Now, let's talk about assessment. Um, this is an example of self-assessment rubric where the students can immediately see what it means, um, what we mean by individual participation, like with different levels of individual participation from I fully participated until I didn't even try, group participation, listening, I listened to my teachers and my peers the whole time. I didn't listen at all. So in this way, students can express uh, their own participation and can reflect also uh, on their engagement during the activity. In this case, the assessment is a social and cognitive skills that must be exercised. You can have formative and summative assessment. You can have individual and group assessment. You can use checklist for observing certain elements that you identified before. You can have an assessment rubric. You can use tools as this one to present to the students to encourage them to self-assess themselves. And also you can conceive specific rubrics for pupils and students with disabilities. So the idea is also not to transform the learning process and the teaching process, but also to transform the assessment. It is important not to assess the outcome, but also to assess the process. It is important to encourage self-assessment and to use forms of formative assessment to support and accompany the students into a change and into an improvement. Thank you for the attention, and I wish you a good work.